All right, well, I don't know what kind of people you are, so let's find out. Take a piece of paper, please. Molly, piece of paper. You can't do it on your mobile. You should get some paper. Come on. How hard can it be? Somebody will lend you a piece of paper. Small piece of paper. You only need a small piece. You'll need a pen, yes, funnily enough. Piece of paper, please. Quick, quick. And when you've got your piece of paper, all I want you to do, please, shh. Once you've got your piece of paper, I want you, please, to draw a pig. Draw a pig. Draw a pig. Draw a pig. Yes, you need a pencil to draw the pig. And when you've drawn the pig, show it to your neighbor. Show it to the person sitting next to you. Show them your pig. Yep, that's very good. Very good. Now then, has everyone drawn the pig? Everyone show it to the neighbor. Now, strange to say, the kind of pig you draw reveals some things about you. So let me tell you. First of all, how big is your pig? Drew, show us your pig. The bigger your pig, the bigger your opinion of yourself. So if you've drawn a very big pig, you think you're a very important person. If you've drawn a very small pig like Andrew, you think you're a very, very unimportant person. Where is the pig on your piece of paper? If it's the top of your piece of paper, you're an optimist. If it's in the middle of your piece of paper, you're a realist. If it's the bottom of your piece of paper, you're more of a pessimistic, negative kind of person. So I think we've got a lot of optimists. Which way is your pig facing? As you look to the pig, who's got the pig facing to the left? The face of the pig, or the head of the pig's to the left? You are left-brain kind of people, analytical, numerical, critical, judgmental. You like data, you like facts. Who's got a pig that's facing to the right? Hardly any of you. You're right-brain people. You're creative, artistic, imaginative, musical. Am I right? Yeah, absolutely. What have the rest of you got then? Who's got a pig that's facing straight on? You're very direct, even confrontational kind of people, aren't you? Yeah. In your face. What? What? What have you? What is it? A piece of pig iron? All right, fine, very good. What's yours? Pig iron, yeah, all right. Okay, very good. Anyone got a pig facing away from them? That's a reflection on you too. All right. So very quickly, take the piece of paper, please. Oh, no, well, let's carry on with the pig for the moment. There's one or two other things we can say about it. I want you to look at the ears on your pig, please. So the bigger the ears, the better a listener you are. So big ears, good listener. No ears, small ears, very poor listener. You don't listen to anybody. Don't take anything in. I want you to look, please, at the legs on your pig. The more legs you've got, the more stable you are. So 4 legs. Who's got 4 legs? Very stable, maybe set in your ways. Who's got 2 legs? That's okay. Who's got no legs showing on the pig? Very unstable kind of person. Very unstable. Unstable. Okay, finally, listen, please. I want you to look at the tail on your pig, please. And the tail on your pig is a very good indicator of the quality of your sex life. It's the longer and curlier, the better. So, hey! Long curly tail, good. No tail, short tail, bad news. Okay, so very quickly, please, very quickly, on the same page, draw a mouse, please. Draw a mouse, quick as you can. Quick, quick. Draw a mouse, quickly, and show it to your neighbor. Draw the mouse. Show the mouse to your neighbor. Okay, listen up, please, folks. Okay, can I have your attention, please? Who in this room drew a mouse that looks at anything like my mouse? Who? Pig Iron Man? Did you? All right. So, who uses one of these every day of the week? You all do. Who sees a little creature that runs across the floor? So why, here's the question, why, when I asked you to draw a mouse, did you draw the mouse you're unfamiliar with rather than the mouse you're familiar with? Yes. Because I programmed your thinking. Your thinking... We didn't use the mouse, no. We didn't believe in Windows. The point is your thinking is predictable. Your thinking is programmed. I could have said that 99% of you would have drawn a mouse, a creature, because of what you've been doing before. And I'm afraid to say that in life, in business, at work, your thinking is programmed. It is routine. It is predictable. And I'm afraid we've got too much of this. Like minds. We don't want like minds. We want open minds. We want minds that think different things, not people that think the same things. And to get away from that, you've got to do a little bit of lateral thinking. And that's, it's not easy, but fortunately for you, I am here to help. And I write on lateral thinking. I've written a number of books, puzzle books and more serious books. And I also help organizations, large companies and small companies, to employ lateral thinking primarily to drive innovation in their businesses. That's what I do. But what I'm going to do with you this afternoon is look just at a few personal things. I'm going to look more at the personal side of lateral thinking and how you can use it to be more creative in whatever you're doing. And it all starts by using the brain. You've got to use the brain. The brain is this amazing organ. We've all got one. It's got millions of neural network connections. It fires up the moment you wake up in the morning. It operates at full capacity right up until the moment you arrive at work. It does, because then it goes into automatic pilot mode. That's what we do around here. This is the way we've done things. Because the brain... Woody Allen described it as his second favorite organ, by the way. So it's a fantastic thing, but it has a weakness. And the weakness is it likes patterns. It's lazy. It likes to do things the way it's always done them. And you've got to work your brain. You've got to force it to be lateral. It's not natural for it. Pair off with somebody next to you, please. Pair off with somebody. Say hello to them. You do it in twos, or you can do this in a three. Okay, Molly, come on. All right. I'm going to ask you two questions. I want you to give your answer to your partner before they give their answer to you, so very quickly, all right? Are you ready? First question. What color is the fridge in your kitchen? What do cows drink? Oh, dear. I was told this was a highly intelligent audience. And living down in Exeter, I thought you'd all know that cows drink water. Cows don't drink milk. But if you ask people those two questions in quick succession, most people say white for the fridge. And then the brain is thinking about a fridge. The brain is thinking about a drink. It's thinking about a white. It's thinking about a cow. What's the obvious thing when you open the fridge? It pops out the answer milk. It's not the right answer. It's not a logical answer, not a creative answer. It's the first answer the brain gives you because the brain is lazy. So to break out from that, you've got to do a little bit of lateral thinking. And lateral thinking is a phrase coined by Edward de Bono in contrast to conventional thinking or vertical thinking, where we build block on block in a very logical fashion. Lateral means coming at the problem from the side. That's what it means. And rather than give you a complicated explanation, I'd like to show you a short video clip to demonstrate the principles of lateral thinking. Can we do this, please? Can we get my first video?
1 minute. 1 minute, please. Time, thank you. Could you all please put down your pens and bring your papers to the front of the room? Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, you're too late. Gave you plenty of warnings about time. You failed. Sorry.
Excuse me, do you know who I am?
I have absolutely no idea.
Good.
Okay, that's lateral thinking in action. It's about finding different ways to solve tricky problems. And in business, it's about finding a new way to deliver the goods or services that your customers need. And if the question is there a better way to do what we're doing, the answer is always yes. You just ain't found it yet. You know, until the 1920s, all shops were like Victorian shops. You'd go in and you say to the assistant, I want some lard, I want some butter, I want some sugar. The assistant would serve you. A man called Michael Cullen said, what would happen if we turned the shop around and instead of the assistant serving the customers helped themselves to the goods they wanted and then paid when they left? And I'll bet all the retail experts of the day said that's a stupid idea. Customers want service. They don't have to do all the work themselves. They'll get confused. You're going to have to put price on everything. He said, I'm going to try it. He created the world's first supermarket, the King Cullen store in New Jersey. It's a tiny little idea, isn't it? Turn the shop around. Its impact has been enormous. It's lateral thinking. In December 2004, there was a robbery at the Northern Bank in Belfast, the biggest bank robbery in British history. They got away with £26 million. £26 million in notes. A lot of the notes were Northern Bank notes. In March 2005, the Northern Bank withdrew all of its notes and replaced them with a new design. And they said to people, if you've got any of the old notes, bring them in with your passport and we'll change them for you. Why did they do that? They did that because they knew the thieves were still sitting on a lot of those notes, millions of them. And it's rather difficult to walk in with £2 million and say, well, I'm a farmer, you know, in Antrim, and I've sold a lot of sheep recently. It was a lateral solution to the problem. And we see it time and time again. People think of different ways to solve problems, and that's lateral thinking. I'm going to give you some tips and hints and advice to make you more effective. And the first of those hints is this. Check your assumptions. Every time you approach a problem in any walk of life, you bring assumptions to bear that limit your ability to solve the problem. And I regret to inform you that the older you are, the more intelligent you are, the more experienced you are, the more assumptions you deploy. You do it all the time. You can't stop yourself. Assumptions really hold us back. And in business, a good thing to say is, what if every assumption that we make about the business was wrong? What if everything we thought that was true was false, and everything that we thought was false was true? It's a good one of the exercises I do in my workshops sometimes. But you don't believe me. So let me ask you this question. What can you cut the grass with, dry your hair with, and study the stars in the sky with? What can you cut the grass with, dry your hair with, and study the stars in the sky with? Your hands? I'm going to take you to my lawn and let's see how you get on. Your hands. What, Mike? The answer is a lawnmower, a towel, and a telescope. You see, I didn't say what one thing. I said, what can you cut the grass with, dry your hair with, and study the stars in the sky with? You assumed I was looking for one thing because you'd heard similar problems of that nature before. You made the problem much harder to solve than it really was because of an assumption that you made. And we do it all the time. We go in to see a new client in a new situation. We assume that it's like something else we've seen before. Mark Twain said this. He said, it's not what we don't know that gets us into trouble. It's what we think we know for sure. The things we think, but the things we're certain of are the most dangerous things. The things we don't know, we can ask about. The things we're sure of, we don't ask about because we're certain of them. And sometimes they're just downright wrong. In the Middle Ages, the study of astronomy was defined as the study of how the heavenly bodies moved around the earth. There's an assumption in there, isn't there? And it wasn't until Copernicus came along and said, what would happen if we put the sun at the center of the solar system? He was able to explain all the motions of the planets much better. Marconi was an Italian radio pioneer. He came to Britain to test his theory. It was possible to send radio waves across the Atlantic. The experts scoffed at him, the physicists. Do we have any physicists in the room? Oh, good. I like to pick on physicists. The physicist said, let's look at the facts. We know the Earth's a giant sphere. We know radio waves travel in straight lines. What's going to happen when you send a straight line off the edge of a sphere? It's going to go tangentially into space. You'll never hear from it again. Marconi said, I'm going to try anyway. He set up his transmitter in Cornwall. He set up his receiver in Newfoundland. And guess what? The signal was received. Why? Well, unknown to the experts, unknown to Marconi as well, there's a charged layer around the Earth called the ionosphere, which reflected the signal. And very often the experts can give you all the reasons why something won't work, and it will, or all the reasons why something will work, and it won't. And that's why great innovators, great inventors, great lateral thinkers don't trust experts. They don't trust theory. They trust experimentation. They trust trial and error. They trust getting out. They trust empirical results. Henry Ford was a great innovator, and in the early days of the Ford Motor Company, if he had a candidate for a senior position in the company he was interviewing, he would take the candidate out for lunch. He would order soup, and he would watch. If the candidate put salt or pepper into their soup before they tasted it, Ford would not hire them. He didn't want the kind of person who made assumptions. He wanted somebody who would test the soup to see how salty it was before they added any salt. What kind of person are you? Do you put salt or pepper on your food before you've tasted it? Do you take action before you've really tested a situation to know what's going on? It's all about making assumptions. And if you make the wrong assumptions, things can go wrong, as this next video clip will demonstrate. Shocking, isn't it? All right. Don't worry, it's only a Porsche. So, the first rule, check your assumption. The second rule that goes with it is this, really. Break the rules. One of the exercises I do in my workshops with corporations is to list all the rules that apply in the business and then say, and I force them into different rooms, and I force them to come up with 80, 90, 100 rules if they can. Particularly ones that relate to commerce and contracts and competition and customers and what they can and can't do in all those situations. And I say, I want you to go through each rule and say, could we break this for the benefit of the company? And typically they find that half the rules they can break. And some of them are really holding them back. Who here has been to the USA on holiday? Who's driven a car in the USA? Who's turned right at a red stoplight in the USA? Who's done that? You done that, Drew? How did it feel the first time you did it? Yeah, but you're allowed to do it. It's incredible. You feel really weird. And then after a while, you feel great, don't you? You think, wow, I'm empowered. Somebody's trusted me to make a decision here. And it's so obvious once you get used to it. The road's clear. In 50 of the 51 states, you're allowed to do it. I think I'm right in saying. Can you? Can you? Well, there we are. But what they're saying is, you've passed your test, you're a grown adult, we'll let you make the decision. In Britain, you're not allowed to make that decision. You come to a crossroads, 6 o'clock on a sunny morning, there's no traffic around. If the light's on red, you are not trusted to drive across. Wow, that's 3 points on your license if you do that. Perfectly safe thing to do. Well, guess what? A lot of the red lights in your business, in your organization, are things that you should let people drive through if they think it's safe to do so. Not recklessly, but you should let them be empowered to make that decision. A lot of the rules that apply, and somebody said to me, what do we need to have more innovation in Britain? What do we need to really become more innovative in our organizations? And the answer I came up with was courageous leadership. We want leaders who are prepared to break rules and do things. And until recently, you weren't allowed to drive on the hard shoulder on the motorway. Do you remember that? And they were told it's really serious if you do that. If there's an accident and you block the hard shoulder, the emergency service won't be able to. Do you remember all that you were told? And then somebody in the highways agency said, just a minute, maybe we should break that rule. And they did a pilot on the M40 or M42, and they tried it. and it actually improved traffic flow. And they said under certain conditions, when it's congested and we've got all the cameras, we know what's going on, we'll let them drive on the hard shoulder. Now they use it all over the place. It's a rule, but it took courage. Somebody had to be bold to do that, because if there'd been a big pile-up, they'd have got it in the neck, wouldn't they? So to break the rules takes courage, but that's what we see, you know. And a lot of companies think they're running a really tight operation. British Airways and, you know, Lufthansa, Air France, thought they were running really tight operations, but surely there were minimum standards you had to offer, the rules of the business. You had to issue tickets. You have to give people allocated seating. You have to sell through travel agents. You have to give people a free cup of tea or coffee on the flight. Surely those are minimum standards that every airline must apply. Well, no. When Southwest in the USA and then EasyJet and Ryanair over here entered the market, they broke all of those rules. They don't issue tickets. They don't sell through travel agents. There's no allocated seating. It's like getting on a bus. You pay extra for speedy boarding. Fantastic concept, speedy boarding. You don't get a free cup of tea or coffee on a Ryanair flight. In fact, Ryanair have gone one stage further. They've done away with the concept of customer service. You actually expect to be insulted, don't you? If you feel mistreated if you haven't been insulted when you're on a Ryanair flight. You know, and people queue up. Every rule you can challenge, you can break. So Andrew and I interviewed Andrew when he came for his job. I've made many mistakes in my course of my career, I'll admit it. And we hired him, and Ashton Tate was very successful in its day. But one of the rules in our industry, and the most powerful rules to break, are the implicit rules. The ones that aren't written down anywhere, but everyone conforms to them. This is what lateral thinkers do. They look for these, and they say, what would happen if we broke them? And the implicit rule in our business, and for Lotus, and for Microsoft, and all the other big players, was that your source code was the crown jewels. You didn't let anyone see it. Only a handful of people saw our source code to DBase, because that was our intellectual property. And then, what was his name? Linus Torvalds said, what would happen if we broke that rule and we made the source code to our new operating system available for anyone? Linux. All right. And he created the open source movement. And it breaks the rule number one in the software industry. Let anybody see it, let anybody change it. Wow, it's chaos. Yeah, it is chaos, but somehow it manages itself and it gets better. So whatever the rules are in your business, ask the question, what would happen if we broke them? And that's what lateral thinkers do all the time. The next thing lateral thinkers do is they ask searching questions, very basic questions. And if you want to be a lateral thinker, if you want to be an innovator, if you want to be a change leader, your job is to ask a lot of questions, and the right questions, very basic. The day you joined the organization you work for, you asked a whole bunch of stupid questions. Why do we do this? What's the purpose of this? Chances are you've stopped asking those questions. That's the way we do things around here now. But the innovative thinker is always asking those basic questions. And if the question is there a better way to do what we're doing? The answer is always yes. You just ain't found it yet. Parker Penn's hired a new marketing director, and they said to her, how can we sell more pens? Sales of our pens have been going down for years. And she went away. She came back to the next executive meeting. She said, I think you're asking the wrong question. And they said, how do you mean? She said, well, you're asking how can we sell more pens. You should ask, what business are we in? And the other directors looked at her rather quizzically. They said, we know what business we're in. We're in the pen business. She said, I don't think so. I've asked people why they buy our pens. And they don't buy them to write with. Why do they buy them then? Well, she said, the person who buys a Parker pen buys it as a gift, as a present, in a case. And they give it to somebody who's retiring or leaving the office, or son's passed his driving test, or daughter's going to university. But typically, the person who buys our product buys a gift. And we should change our pricing, our packaging, our promotion, our distribution to be aligned with the gift industry, not the pen industry. They did that, they were much more successful. One of the basic questions I ask when I go in is, what business are you in? What's the real added value that your organization provides? And is there a better way to deliver it? And it's a good question to ask. And of course, you get different answers for different people. The chairman of Black & Decker once famously said people don't go into a DIY store because they need one of our drills. They go in because they need a hole in the wall. Wonderbra, in their internal communication to staff, say this: we do not sell underwear. We do not sell lingerie. What we sell is self-confidence for women. That's what they figured out they sell. self-confidence for women. Harley Davidson don't sell motorbikes. They're selling the concept of freedom. They're trying to get men to join a club. They're aiming at men about my age, sort of mid to late 30s. Why are they laughing, Andrew? Okay, early 40s. So what is it you're really selling? But it's only by asking those very basic questions. Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google, said, we run this company on questions, not answers. If you can ask the right questions, there's lots of smart people who will give you the answers. If you're asking the wrong question, it's tough. I read recently about incubators for babies in the third world. In the third world, millions of babies die every year who could be saved if there were reliable incubators to put them in. Babies that are born prematurely or underweight, and they die. And what happens is charities send incubators to hospitals in Africa, and the incubators typically break down after a few weeks, and there's nobody there can service them. They have lost the manual. They don't know they're there in the corridor on use, as is the case with a lot of medical equipment in African hospitals. So what's the question? Now, you might think the question is, how can we build a really reliable incubator for babies in Africa? That would be a reasonable question for your brainstorm. But there's a company in America called Design That Matters, and they asked a different question. They asked this question: what equipment works in Africa? What equipment is maintained and runs in African towns and villages? And they asked that question, and the answer was pretty clear. It's vans and cars, typically Toyota. Toyota vans and cars operate all throughout Africa. Every village, every town has got a mechanic who can fix a Toyota. So what did they do? They built a baby incubator out of Toyota parts. Every part came from a Toyota, apart from the frame, which they had custom built. But the battery is a Toyota battery. The indicators are used to indicate whether it's working or not. The heater was the heater from the Toyota. Everything was a Toyota part. So to deliberately make it easy to maintain. That's lateral thinking. And that's the kind of thinking that can change people's lives. By asking a different question, a more fundamental question. Sir Isaac Newton was a lateral thinker. He asked the question, why does an apple fall from a tree? And everyone else said, Isaac, get a life. Don't worry about it. Apples fall from trees. You're a clever guy. Solve some tough problem like turning water into beer or lead into gold. Don't worry about apples. He said, no, it bothers me. And if an apple falls from a tree because it's attracted by the earth, why doesn't the moon fall into the earth? By asking those very basic questions that everyone else walked past, he was able to conceive his law of gravitational attraction, his laws of motion that underpin the whole development of Western science and technology. And the person who redefined the Newtonian world was Einstein, who asked the question, what would the universe look like if I rode through it on a beam of light? By asking that question and using the power of his imagination, he was able to conceive his theory of relativity. Einstein said this, he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination is more important than knowledge. What do you use in your job most of the time? Knowledge or imagination? Most people are using knowledge. What do we teach at school? Who's got kids going through GCSE? Do they need any imagination to pass GCSE, or do they need knowledge? It's a multiple choice question. It's all knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. A-level, very little imagination. Even a degree course, virtually no imagination. We crush out imagination. When they bring them to work, do it our way. We don't want your ideas, all right? Smart young graduate, you just follow our procedures. Learn to do it our way. Fit in. That's the last thing we need in the smart young graduate. We want the smart young graduate to say, well, I've seen some things outside that might work better here. I'm not saying knowledge is a bad thing, by the way. Knowledge is a good thing. But it's when you combine knowledge with imagination that you get the really powerful innovations. Okay. So before we go on, let's show another video clip, shall we? For time. So I'll give you just a couple more pieces of advice and I must stop. The next thing I would say is deliberately take a different point of view. If everyone else is looking at the problem like this, you should look at the problem like this. And there are ways to do this. There are ways I do it on my workshops, and there are ways to do it in all sorts of walks of life. But deliberately take a different point of view. We've got the Olympics coming to London in the summer, haven't we? Who's got tickets to go to the Olympics? Very good. You're the lucky ones. I got some, but only for one of the events I applied for. But in the 1968 Olympics, which were held in Mexico City, the audience was amazed to see a young man come up and take the high jump with his back to the bar. No one had ever done it before. Everyone else went over with their belly to the bar, the so-called Western roll or straddle. And Dick Fosbury, an American student, said, "Is there a better way to do a high jump?" And he conceived going over backwards. And the American coach said, "It's a terrible thing. If kids copy them, they'll all break their necks." But in the end, everyone did it. And it's perfectly safe to do. And he changed the way people did the high jump. And he asked the question, is there a different way to do it? And there's always a different way. Or in business, there's always a different way. Until 1952, there was only one television company in the UK. It was called the BBC. And then in 1953, the government decided to auction licenses for commercial radio, TV stations by region. And a lot of companies thought this was a fantastic opportunity. Commercials on television are licensed to print money. So they put teams of analysts on to analyze the demographics of each region to see which are the wealthiest regions which would generate the most advertising response. There was a small company in the south of England called Granada Cinemas, had a handful of cinemas, run by a legendary Jewish businessman, Sidney Bernstein. His parents were immigrants into the country from Eastern Europe. And he said to his team, "I want to bid for this. I'd like to get one of these." He said, "But everyone else that's bidding will be looking for the richest region. I don't want you to find me the richest region. I want you to find me the wettest region in the UK, and we'll bid for that." And his team went away. They came back and they said, "We studied it. The area with the most population and highest precipitation is the northwest of England." He said, "Right, we'll bid for that." And he got it fairly cheaply. He got Bolton and Blackburn and Bury and Manchester and Liverpool and Wigan and all those places that play in the Premiership. Because he'd figured out there's no point in getting Chelsea and Westminster if everyone's out walking the dog in the park. He wants somewhere it's pouring down outside and people stay in and watch TV. But the point is this, when everyone else is looking for the richest, the lateral thinker says, let's look for the wettest. Let's look for something completely different. I talked about Ashton Tate and DBase and open source. There was a chap called Rob McEwen, bought a gold mine in Canada called the Red Lake Mine. And the yield from the Red Lake Mine had been going down for years. The production of gold had been going down. And they couldn't figure out what to do about it. They tried all sorts of things. And he went to a conference on Linux and open source computing. And he thought, how can we apply the principles of Linux to gold exploration? Here's a challenge for you. And he did. He came back and he took all the data on the mine, all the geological data, all the seismic data, everything he had, and he put it on the internet, open source, every piece of data that he ever got. And he issued a challenge, the Gold Corp Challenge. He offered $500,000 Canadian to anyone who could accurately predict where they should drill for gold. And the team that won it was from Australia. They used fractal graphics to figure out, I don't know what that fractal graphics is, but they used it, and they predicted where to drill. And where they predicted was very accurate. In fact, the top three all accurately predicted where to drill for gold. Everyone else in the industry was horrified. He's putting all of their data, their most valuable assets, out for anyone to see. He's putting it in the public domain. Yes. He's using the internet. He's crowdsourcing his problem and getting a better solution. And that's what lateral thinkers do. They look at different ways to do things. They deliberately choose a different approach. The great guru of lateral thinking is Edward de Bono. He writes a lot of books on lateral thinking. His books are very dry and dusty, whereas mine are fun and interesting. But he does have one or two good ideas. And he tells the story of how he consulted with Ford Motor Company in the UK. And they said to him, "Dr. de Bono, can you help us? Whatever we do with our cars, the competition copies. So we put in anti-lock brakes or dual airbags, or we put in a nice rounded bumpers, and Vauxhall or Peugeot copy that. What can we do to get a unique, sustainable, competitive advantage for Ford? Something your business wants, and your business wants, and your business wants, and your business wants. Everybody wants a unique, sustainable, competitive advantage." And he went away. And he came back a couple of weeks later, gave them a big bill. He said, "I've got the answer for you." They said, "Great, what is it?" He said, "What you should do is, you should go to every major town and city in this country. You should buy a car park in the center of that town or city and make that car park available for drivers of Ford cars only. And their jaws hit the desk. It was way too radical for them, and they didn't implement it. But it seems to me to be brilliantly lateral. The point is, they'd all been approaching the problem from the point of view of automobile engineers, Jeremy Clarkson types, petrol heads, and they were interested in brake horsepower and turning circles and, 0 to 60 and all these things, which all the motor mechanics are interested in. He approached it from the point of view of a little old man or little old woman who wants to go shopping. They're not interested in brake horsepower. They're interested in whether the car will start, whether they can get through the traffic, whether they can park when they get to their destination. Now, you can't do much about the traffic. But if you could guarantee that wherever you drove in this country, there was a car parking space for you in the center of that city, that would be a powerful reason even to drive a Ford, wouldn't it? It's about that kind of approach. I write books of lateral thinking puzzles, and until my session was shortened today, I was going to do some with you, and they're a lot of fun. And they're all strange situations where you have to ask a lot of questions, and you get yes-no answers, that's all. You have to figure out what's going on. You probably know one or two of them. And one of my favorite puzzles goes like this. A little girl was told by her parents never to open the cellar door, or she would see something she was not supposed to see. One day, while her parents were out, she opened the cellar door. What did she see? That's all you're given. And you have to ask a lot of questions, and eventually you might figure out the answer. I have to tell you the answer now, which I hate doing, because I think people should sweat to earn the answer to these. But the answer is, when she opened the cellar door, she saw for the first time the sky and sunlight and trees and flowers, because she'd been kept all her life in the cellar. And the point about the story is this, that if you start with the assumption that you open a cellar door to look down into a cellar, you've started in the wrong place to solve the problem. And a lot of the answers don't really help you. You're assuming what's down in the cellar. She's down. Also, you make the assumption that parents are benign, don't you? It's a natural assumption. So you walk into, a lot of the puzzles depend on you making the wrong assumptions. So if I had time, we'd look at more of those. So what have I told you so far? Check your assumptions. Break the rules. Ask searching questions. Deliberately take a different point of view. I'll give you one more piece of advice. There's lots more in this book. How to be a brilliant thinker. Lots of good stuff. All the stories are in there. But all of that is meaningless unless you implement. If you just have lots of great ideas but never do anything, you're not a change agent. You're not an innovator. You're a wacky thinker. All right? So you've got to, when you have great ideas, you've got to do something with them. You've got to implement them. The Americans have this saying, ready, fire, aim. And the British approach tends to be ready, aim a bit more. No, let's do a study, let's do a spreadsheet, no, we'll put it off to next year. But the Americans, ready, right, let's go. Your first shot was too long, adjust it. Second shot, too short. Third shot, you get there. So you get out, you have an experiment. It works in business. It's not so good if you're an ally of the Americans in time of war, but in business, it works because you're out there experimenting. Don't do it if you make parachutes, all right, but anything else, you try it somewhere, see what happens. And when you try, you will fail. Right? Innovation involves trying things which don't work. It involves wasting money. It's what I advise my clients to do, to waste money on things that don't work. If everything you try succeeds, you're not being bold enough. If every time you throw the dart, you hit the bullseye, you're standing too close to the target. All right? You're not really stretching yourself. Why does Roger Federer serve so many double faults? If you watch him in a match, most matches Roger Federer will serve 5 or 6 double faults in the match. Nadal the same. Maria Sharapova a lot more. Now, he could eliminate those. He could easily put over a second serve which was in and safe. But he's a champion. He's figured out it's not worth doing that, because if he does that, it makes it easier for his opponent. He pushes himself as hard as he can, as close to the limit as he can with his second serve, and he's prepared to suffer a few points given away. You've got to serve more double faults. You've got to do things that fail. Penn State University in America has a degree course in engineering, and one of the modules is Failure 101. And every engineer has to pass that class. You have to pass Failure 101, which is an interesting concept. But they have to have then it can't be you just don't turn up. You have to build a bridge that collapses, or you have to build something and test it to fail. You've got to know what failure feels like. because it's part of the learning process. The innovator's motto is this, by the way: I succeed or I learn, but I never fail. I succeed or I learn. So if you fail and you learn from it, that's okay. If you fail and you don't learn from it and you keep making the same mistake, that's bad. All right. So, what have I told you? Check your assumptions, ask searching questions, break the rules, deliberately try a different point of view, take some risks, try some things. Let me tell you a story, one final story about Charles Dunstan. He's the CEO of Carphone Warehouse. And they took delivery of the Motorola Razr, which was a new mobile phone to compete with the Nokia phones at the time. And it was selling quite well. He said to his team, who's buying this? And they said, it's very interesting. It seems to be that 80% of the sales are to men and only 20% are to women. He said, why is that? And so we've researched it, and we think it's because it's only available in two colors, black or silver gray, and they're both kind of masculine colors. So he picked up the phone, he phoned his contact in Motorola, the top man in Motorola Europe. He said to him, would it be possible for you to produce the Motorola Razr in shocking pink? He said, yes, we could. He said, if you produce it in shocking pink, could Carphone Warehouse have a worldwide exclusive on that? He said, yes, you could, but there's a minimum order. He said, what's the minimum order? He said, it's 250,000 phones. You order 250,000 phones, and we'll give them to you at a very special price, and you'll be the only place in the world that can supply them. So he said, thanks very much. Put the phone down, and he got his team together. He said, let's look. What would happen? What's the worst that can happen here? What's the upside? What's the downside? Can we place this bet? And then he picked up the phone, he placed the order. And the only place you could get a shocking pink Motorola Razr was Carphone Warehouse. In the end, they sold 600,000 of them. That's what innovative leaders do. They take calculated gambles. They say, what's the worst that can happen here? Could we? Well, we'll have to shift them all at car boot sales. We'll get rid of them somehow. All right. We'll put them on eBay, but there's a way. What's the upside? What's the downside? And they're constantly placing bets, knowing that many of them will fail. But you only need one or two big bets to pay off. Venture capitalists have a very interesting approach to innovation. They're very smart, but they don't know which of the businesses they're backing are going to succeed and which aren't. So they back a whole bunch of them. They put £1 million into each of 20 companies. They know statistically that of those 20 startups, 12 will be bust inside 18 months. Most of the others won't do well. They only need one Apple, one eBay, one Skype. It's paid back the whole portfolio. So they put the money in, they watch carefully. And then those that are doing well, they put more resources in. Those that aren't doing well, they strangle them. Or they just cut off any more resources. And it's the same with innovation. You've got to try lots of different things, lots of different ideas. All the time you're trying things. The agile organization is always trying new things, always taking its lateral thinking ideas and implementing them in small experiments to see which work and which don't. Doesn't work, stop it. Doesn't work, stop it. Doesn't work. Customers like this. Let's do more of it. That's the way it works. So I'll finish with one story. And it concerns a woman whose son went to university, and he was in his second year at university, and she went to visit him in his flat. And he shared his flat with his flatmate, Jane. And she said to him, John, is there anything going on between you and Jane? He said, no, Mother, it's purely platonic. She's my flatmate, she pays the rent, we're just friends, that's all. And his mother had a look around the flat, she had lunch with them, then she left. And a week later, Jane came to John. She said, John, I can't understand it, but ever since your mother was here a week ago, I can't find the soup ladle anywhere. So John wrote to his mother. He said, Dear Mother, I'm not saying that you took the soup ladle. I'm not saying that you didn't take the soup ladle. But since you were here a week ago, we can't find the soup ladle anywhere. And his mother wrote back to him. She said, Dear John, I'm not saying that you're sleeping with Jane, and I'm not saying that you're not sleeping with Jane, but if Jane slept in her own bed, she would have found the soup ladle by now. Thank you very much.
Do you want a couple of quick games with Paul? Yeah? A couple of quick games with Paul. See if we can't get some of these books going. I'll leave.
Okay. Have you got your pencil and paper? I'm just going to give you a number of Wally questions. These all come from my books. And these are all mean, low, nasty trick questions designed to catch you out. All right? And it doesn't matter what your answer is. My answer's the right one. All right? Are you ready? What three things that you can eat can you never eat for breakfast? Write down, please. What three things that you can eat can you never eat for breakfast? How many cubic meters of earth, question number 2, are there in a hole measuring 3 meters wide by 4 meters long by 5 meters deep? How many cubic meters of earth are there in a hole measuring 3 meters wide, 4 meters long, 5 meters deep? That's an easy one, isn't it? The hole. Question number 3. In what month do Americans eat the least? In what month do Americans eat the least? Question number 4, this is the medical question. Removing an appendix is called an appendectomy. Removing tonsils is called a tonsillectomy. What's it called when they remove a growth from your head? What's the correct technical expression when they remove a growth from your head? Removing an appendix, an appendectomy, tonsils, tonsillectomy. What's it called when they remove a growth from your head? Question number 5. Why do Chinese men eat more rice than Japanese men? Why do Chinese men eat more rice than Japanese men? Question number 6. Which is greater? 6 dozen, or half a dozen? Which is greater, 6 dozen, or half a dozen? Question number 7. If it took 8 men 10 hours to build a wall, how long would it take 4 men to build it? If it took 8 men 10 hours to build a wall, how long would it take 4 men to build it? Question number 8. Your best estimate. How many seconds are there in a year? How many seconds are there in a year? Question number 9, the religious question. A Muslim living in England cannot be buried on church ground even if he converts to Christianity. Why not? A Muslim living in England cannot be buried in church ground even if he converts to Christianity. Why not? And question number 10. What do you always get hanging from apple trees? What do you always get hanging from apple trees? I feel embarrassed about this, I must say. All right, how did you do? Ooh, I'll trust you to mark your own. Let's go. What 3 things that you can eat can you never have for breakfast? Lunch, dinner, and supper. Lunch, dinner, and tea. By definition, they're not breakfast. The things you can eat, lunch, dinner, that's right. There's the right answer. Lunch, dinner, and tea, or lunch, dinner, and supper. Okay, how many cubic meters of earth are in the hole 3 by 4 by 5? None. There's no earth in the hole. Yeah, so the answer's none. You all got that one, I hope. How are you doing so far, Drew? Oh, you'll get the next one. In which month do Americans eat the least? February. Everyone eats less in February. It's fewer days. Everyone eats less in February. Oh, okay, question number 4, the medical question. Removing an appendix is called an appendectomy. Removing tonsillectomy, what is it called when they remove a growth from your head? A haircut is the right answer, yeah, haircut. I'll accept shave as well. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Why do Chinese men eat more rice than Japanese men? There's more of them. There's 10 times as many. You got one. Yeah. There's 10 times as many Chinese men. Yeah. All right. Which is greater, 6 dozen, dozen, or half a dozen, dozen? They're not the same. 6 dozen, dozen is 12 times as many as half a dozen, dozen. Shame on you if you said they're the same. Write it down. 6 times 12 times 12, or 6 times 12. Oh, dear me. All right. That was number 6, 6 dozen, dozen. Number 7 was, if it takes 8 men, 10 hours to build a wall, how long will it take 4 men? No, the wall's already built is the right answer. The 8 men built the wall. So it's already, they built the wall. How long will it take 4 men to build? It's already built. The answer is no time at all. It's already built. Okay, your best answer, how many seconds are there in a year? Sorry? 12 is the right answer. And what are they? 2nd of January, 2nd of February, 2nd of March. Thank you. He got it. It can't. How hard can it be if he got it? Now the religious question. A Muslim living in England cannot be buried on church ground even if he converts to Christianity because he's not dead. We don't bury living people in England. So he's living in England, so he can't be buried. All right, very good. And finally, what do you always get hanging from apple trees? Sorry? Sore arms, tired arms. You try it. You'll always get sore arms hanging from apple trees. Trust me, it's true. All right, let's see. Add up your score. Who got 5 or more? Yes. How many did you get? 5, 2 6s. All right, 5. We've got 2 6s still. We've got 2 winners. Fortunately, I've got 2 books. Otherwise, we'd have to have a shootout and more puzzles. So would you like to step forward, please? Hey! 6 is a good score, by the way. 6 is a very good score. Well done. Yeah, they need it most. It's true, you're right. But I'd need 100 then, wouldn't I? Thank you very much. Thank you.